Welcome to Crunching Tackles, where we break down the hardest hitting social issues in sports. On today's show, we are talking about the best Winter Olympics of my lifetime. My name is Chad Wylie, and with me, as always, is John Nekrasov. John, it's a bold claim, and I'll stand by it.
It's been a really good Winter Olympics. I was struggling. I was thinking as we were getting ready to record, this is Olympic time is always a really unique time for our pod because we take a break from all the kind of year over year regularly scheduled programming that we always cover and just get to, much like the World Cup, cover just this amalgamation of countries and sports all coming together. But this year has felt different in terms of just there have been so many insane stories that I feel like Winter Olympics are not normally like this, at least in my memory. I remember growing up. Did you have an intimate relationship with the Winter Olympics growing up? Because I feel like I always really liked them, and then there was a time where I lost interest in it a little bit, but I feel like fully back right now.
Yeah, I would say that I did not have a strong relationship with the Winter Olympics as a kid. Maybe it was on, but I don't remember watching the sports a whole lot, or I just don't have very, very strong memories of it. I do remember caring a lot about the 2018 Winter Olympics when we were in college. And
Right.
that was obviously before our podcast, but that was the one that was a huge, really significant cultural Winter Olympics because it was the I believe North Korea and South Korea joint hosted.
That's right.
Which was, I remember Mike Pence being there. It was a huge political deal. And then there were certain parts of the game that were also just really excellent. I loved, we were talking about right before the podcast, the men's curling team from the USA in 2018 was just 4 middle-aged dads who won gold. And that was just an easy story to latch onto. And then that momentum really didn't carry into the 2022. I don't know why. But that was not, I don't think that one kind of latched on to me in the same way. Certainly not as much as these past 2 weeks have.
No, I think that's exactly right. I mean, 2022, we were podcasting at the time and reflecting back. So that was Beijing 2022. And a couple things I remember sticking out. One that we were just talking about off air was just the massive controversy around China hosting and the human rights controversies that we were discussing all the time during that era, specifically with the sending of the Uyghur population of China into concentration camps and extermination stories coming out of China, basically as China was getting ready to host the Olympics. It was shocking. You remember they disappeared that tennis player at some point during that kind of couple year period around the Olympics. And that was controversial. Russia had just invaded Ukraine basically a month prior, if I remember correctly. So it was really fraught time. And I also think the time difference made a huge deal. And we can talk a little bit about what that experience has been like watching a European Olympics. But I still get to see some things live on a daily basis. And with the Olympics taking place in China, with the time zone being so different, it's like the Australian Open. You're basically just accepting that you're going to watch your own primetime coverage and it's never going to be live. So if you have app notifications, everything gets spoiled for you.
Yeah. When we talk about the time difference always plays a factor in how much attention we can pay to something. This one is just on all day, basically from when we wake up until the end of the workday. So if you have the flexibility to just have a backup screen on, it's just always there. And I feel like the coverage has been very accessible on Peacock, which I don't know did Peacock exist in 2022? I don't even know if the streaming service existed.
Not at this level, but they did such a good job with 2024 in Paris. And again, I'm so impressed with it again. It is the best streaming service sports experience out there, I think.
I love it. I mean, yeah. We obviously watch a lot of soccer on there, but yeah, I mean the Gold Zone version, if you like that, or just they just have everything's there and it's easy to find, and I appreciate that. But yeah, I mean, I feel like we didn't get to really preview this Olympics because of just how much other things were going on in the sports calendar. But once the Super Bowl ended and I got to kind of redirect my focus, the Winter Olympics has been that primary focus, and it's been really, really fun. We've got 6 or 7 really awesome, like they're not all awesome, but very important stories to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And that's as much as we could ask for, both as fans and as a podcast that talks about social issues.
Yeah, no, we're so excited. I mean, there's so much sports, and there's a lot of controversy around these Olympics too, in ways that I think are really meaningful. And always, the Olympics are always an interesting barometer of where the world is at. Like thinking back to Rio in, what was it, 2016, like there was controversy in Brazil specifically, and that was kind of foreshadowing some trends maybe that would happen in other countries down the road. But this year has been really special. Milan has done an incredible job. It's cool to think like this is the 25th Winter Olympics ever. They started in 1924 in France. And we've just had unbelievable story after unbelievable story. And just to kind of set a tone for this rest of this episode, like there was a period in the first week or so where I was very worried about America's performance in these Winter Olympics. And we have now matched, the Olympics basically have, I believe, 2 days left. And when we're recording on Friday, February 20th, and we have equaled our record for total golds in the Winter Olympics that we set in 2002 in Salt Lake City when we hosted. We have equaled that with 2 days to go. And I don't know, I think we could break that record genuinely.
Well, it makes me very nervous to think that record comes down to the men's hockey final against Canada.
Is that our only one that we have left?
Well, I don't think that is our only one. But if that was like the last event and we were still tied, that would be a very, very exciting. I think that we can beat Team Canada 100%.
Well, we just did it in the women's, which we'll get to later. But
yeah.
Completing the hockey double over Canada would be huge for this podcast and huge for the United States of America.
Just at the best time too for all of those relations. Everything's very normal and very chill.
What's been fun though, I think, is that like there have been genuine, like there have been really great individual stories, but you also want like just a tiny bit of sporting vitriol for the Olympics to really have the spice you need. And in the absence of Russia, obviously not really being present at these Olympics, and China not being really the same force that it is in the Summer Olympics, USA versus Canada has delivered on many different stages throughout this Winter Olympics, which has been a lot of fun.
It has. Before we get into like the details of the stories, I would be remiss to not mention that like it's cool that Norway just have a thing that they're better at than everyone else, which is winter sports.
They're literally just like, they broke their record for golds this year, and they're going to win the medal table for I think the 3rd Olympics running. Is that right?
Yeah, they're unbelievable.
At least the 3rd. Yeah.
Yeah. The Norwegians have the Winter Olympics and Erling Haaland, and that's like their sporting pedigree. And honestly, you could do a lot worse.
That's so true.
Do you want to start? I guess I have a story I'd like to start with. Going back to Canada, which you did a good segue to, and then I jumped back to Norway, but we should come back to Canada. Because John, I told you before we started podcasting that every 4 years I remember that my favorite sport is curling, right? If you ask me at any other point in my life what my favorite sport is, it would kind of fluctuate. Sometimes it's soccer, sometimes it's football, sometimes it's college basketball. But every Winter Olympics, I remember that no, it's always curling. And the U.S. did not do as well in curling as I would have liked. The women do play for the bronze medal. The men did not make the semifinals. Did we win bronze in the mixed, or did we lose bronze in the mixed?
Didn't we? I think we got silver. We got silver in mixed.
We got silver in the mix. That's right. That's right.
Yeah,
we got
lost
silver.
to Sweden. Yeah.
Yes. And but the real, I think the most viral part of this entire Olympics on my social media has been the Canada double touch cheating scandal, which has somehow impacted both their men's and their women's team.
Chad, what is with the Canadians and cheating? Like,
crazy.
Do you remember the soccer thing with like the drones and everything last year?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Like, what is going on? Is there an epidemic in Canadian sports?
Maybe their nice guy facade is nothing more than a facade. We might need to investigate that further. With all due respect to our neighbors to the north.
I mean, I also just want to shout out, I had no idea until like a few months ago that Justin Trudeau, the former Prime Minister of Canada, was dating Katy Perry. Like, are you aware of this?
Yeah. I've been aware. Yeah.
This came across.
So you want to give a shout out to Justin Trudeau is what you want to do. on this podcast.
I would say that Justin Trudeau and cheating Canadian curling teams go hand in hand in my mind.
Oh,
anyway,
go further on then. So I've spent a lot of time watching curling. I watched like an 18-minute documentary about how curling stones are made and like where they come from and how they are made. I've done a lot of digging into this story, and the rules of curling make two things absolutely clear. Number one, you cannot touch the granite part of the stone at any point. You can only touch the handle. And two, you cannot touch the stone after it begins to cross the green line, which I don't know why it's called the hog line, but it is. I don't know why. Don't ask me. But that's what it's called. And when you look at the slow motion replays of both the men's and the women's Canadian teams, they are very clearly doing both of those things. They are poking with their finger directly on the granite part of the stone after it's crossed the line. And in fact, the women's team in one of their round robin games did have one of their stones disqualified because it was caught, and a judge ruled out that stone. I think people are most aware of this story because of a very expletive heavy viral clip that happened between the Canadian men's team and Sweden. And Canada's Mark Kennedy was accused of cheating by Sweden's Oscar Eriksson. And Mark Kennedy had some very choice words in that situation. It was all caught on microphones because every curling player is like mic'd the entire time, so you can hear all of their conversations, which is really great TV coverage. But that became a very significant scandal. And Canada are basically trying to say that it's incidental and doesn't matter, and also it's not happening, and also it doesn't matter if it's happening because nobody has caught them. And I find none of those defenses in any way excusable.
Well, and I remember, if I'm remembering correctly, the Swedes asked for some TV cameras to be like moved, or like to have a separate camera set up so that they could be filming the person like who's actually launching the stone from a different angle. Because
I think Sweden brought their own. Yeah, I think Sweden actually brought their own camera, and their team did it. Like their team,
so they were doing it.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously people were aware of this ahead of the Olympics, which makes it even more exciting.
Yeah, I mean, if Canada has a reputation for this kind of thing, then obviously like these guys probably play each other all the time. Like they'd be aware of it, and so they. Unfortunately, there is no such thing as like instant replay. There is no replay system in curling. So unless the referee catches it in real time with his naked eye, there's nothing that can be done. However, there have been actually a rule change, which is that teams. So usually the referees stand behind the curling, behind the ice, and teams can now request if they want the referee to move to the side, and they can actually judge it from the green line if that's requested by the team. So that is a rule change that's happened. And surprisingly, Canada has stopped poking the stones since that rule change.
And I would also like to note that they have not won a gold or a silver. I believe. Is that right? Isn't that right?
That is right. Will they be playing for the gold in men's? No. Did they win?
Let me verify.
I can't remember.
I think they
lost.
They're playing for the women's bronze. And they are playing Great Britain for the gold tomorrow.
Okay. I hope the whole world rallies behind Great Britain. I certainly will be.
I think what's interesting about this is like when Katie and I were watching curling early on in the tournament, we were just laughing about like how fun it is because it really does magnetize everyone because it's such a unique sport compared to the rest of the Olympics. But it feels like such a genuinely non-controversial sport other than this incident. We literally spoke this into existence. We were like, this sport feels like something that's just so chill. Everyone's so gentlemanly. It's like if croquet was an Olympic sport, you know, where you're like using the mallet to hit the balls through the little hoops, but in ice form. And then this story happened immediately afterwards, and we were like, well, everything can be controversial when it comes to national pride in sports. And I'm really excited to see VAR introduced next Winter Olympics.
Yeah. Now Mark Kennedy's dropping F-bombs on live television, and it's like, whoa, that escalated quickly.
It's so funny.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anything is going to come of this story. Like, I don't, it'd be interesting to see if they instituted instant replay. But honestly, I don't know if that would even be good for the sport. It moves at a good pace, and it's very interesting. It's just I could do a whole episode on curling. Maybe one day I will. But it's just a fun sport to watch, and it's a fun sport to like dig into the rules of. And I love it. I love it. And I wish the USA was good again.
Yeah, me too. Have you ever played?
No, I would love to.
So I did. There's a curling rink in Nashville. Can't remember if I've talked about this on the show before, but I went once with some folks from work, and we tried it. And something I'd watched a little bit of curling before, but having tried it, I was much more invested this year. And what was surprising to me watching them having already done it was the difference in power between when you're on the ice, what you expect to need, and what they're actually doing. Like I was constantly basically overshooting the target every single time with like no practice at all. I assumed going onto the rink that it would like require a lot of force to get it all the way across the ice. And then I would just keep hitting the backboard basically every single time and going out of bounds.
So it really glides.
And it turns out, I mean, watching them, then all of a sudden I was like, they barely, like almost all of the movement comes from the sweeping, not the actual like movement. The application of the curl is really like most of what the person who's pushing off does, which I don't know. That was just funny having actually.
Well, I hope that you followed all the rules properly when you played.
I'm sure I didn't, but I basically barely scored. So I'm excited to go back next time though. Now having watched Olympic greatness.
Yeah, I would love to do it at some point.
That would be good social media content for this pod at some point.
Yeah. John, our next story, we just need to be very honest about the fact up front that this story is a real sports culture story that does involve male genitalia.
I don't know how to cover this in a PG way, but we'll figure it out.
We're just, if you're listening with small children, you may want to fast forward, 10 minutes, but we are going to talk about this story.
Yes, we are.
This story was like coming out basically like this was the first, I think, big Olympic story I saw, which was that the World Anti-Doping Agency was investigating ski jumpers for injecting their penises with performance-enhancing drugs. Is the most simple way for me to talk about this story.
This is a real story.
And I think to talk about this story, I think we kind of need to talk about like what ski jumping is and how the rules work. It's a sport in which you basically are you're wearing skis and you go down and then up a ramp, and then you kind of just soar in the air down a hill, and you're trying to go as far as you can in the air. And so the distance is measured from where your feet take off to where your feet land, and that's part of the score. And so obviously in order to keep the competition fair, the uniforms that the players wear matter a lot. They all have to be custom fitted to each athlete's body measurements in order to ensure that no one is getting more drag than other people or more lift than other people. That's obviously a big part when you're talking about wind resistance and flying in the air and things like that. And so last year during a competition, the Norwegian skiers, the ski jumpers, were accused and then found guilty of sewing extra fabric into the crotch area of their uniforms after they were measured in order to make their suits larger. The idea being that if your suit is larger, there's more surface area to catch the wind and cause you to sail further in the air. And 2 coaches were actually like put on suspension. This turned into a big story. Pablo Torre did a whole podcast about it. It became a whole thing. And so leading into that happened, those changes to the suits were made after the players were measured for their suits. This story that we're talking about for this Olympics and here in 2026 is basically claiming that athletes were injecting their penises with hyaluronic acid to make their penises bigger at the time that they went to get measured for the suit. And so based on that, their suits would be larger than they needed to be. And then when they skied, they would again have more surface area on their suit, leading to more less wind resistance, more sail time. And, some experts have said that even a centimeter of extra suit could equal like 5 extra meters of airtime.
Right.
Like the margins are very, very interesting in how this sport works. So this is an active investigation. No players have been named as being being investigated for this. However, USA Today got a plastic surgeon to say on the record that in January he did inject an Olympic athlete with hyaluronic acid in January. So this is a real story. I can't believe we're talking about any of this.
Astonishing.
Yeah.
Like, to me, between these two things, it is the most absurd cheating scandal of all time. Like, there has never, in my opinion, been a more insane doping story than what we are discussing right now.
Yeah.
And
do you have any reaction to it?
I think it's just so funny because, like, if you've watched ski jumping at any point during this Olympics, it is basically like a flying squirrel sport. You basically, you have kind of a loose fitting suit, and like you said, they go up a ramp and then they hold their arms out and just soar through the air like a little flying squirrel. And it is kind of cool in its own way. Like, it's not like my favorite sport of all time, but it is unique, and that's what the Olympics are all about. And it's just so funny to me to think about the things people will sacrifice for marginal gains at the top of elite sport, particularly in Olympic sports where the margins are so fine. I've found myself, watching, say, like the luge teams, and the differences sometimes between them are like 100th of a second, between winning and losing. Mm-hmm. And obviously the margins are very fine in the sports that we consume more regularly, like team sports. But because everything's so repeatable and it's less about just like one run or one performance, often it feels like the margins aren't that fine in such a like an exact like centimeter, millimeter way. And Olympic sports just have that way of just bringing that exactitude out in a way that like football obviously doesn't. And so it's just so funny to me, like in this circumstance, someone genuinely sat there thinking for a long time, like, there has to be a way for me to break the system here. What could I possibly do? And I would assume maybe they took an idea from the Norwegians who altered their suit. Maybe that came out and they were like, wow, that is a good idea. How can I do it without getting caught? And this was the idea they came up with. And that's just astonishing. It's, at the very least, Chad, it's creative thinking.
It's certainly creative thinking, and more power to them. I think if I was gonna like make a real interesting takeaway from this story, it's just that these things really matter to people, right? Like
yeah, that's
we want athletes to care about their sports because we care about sports and we want to see excellence. But then we ask athletes to reach to the very, 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 very peak of their capacity, but not cross the line into anything wrong. And these athletes are just seeking any sort of edge they can get to have the smallest advantage to win gold. And it's obviously like, it's cheating if it's proven true. So that's bad. And it also, I think, would be a little embarrassing to any athlete who was named having done it. But it does show that, like, same thing with curling. Like, I don't spend any time of my life, the other 3 years and 9 months, thinking at all about ski jumping.
Right.
But if you were a ski jumper, having an edge in ski jumping is like the number one obsession of your life. Like, having any sort of edge. And it just, like, this thing really matters to these people, and they will do crazy and even wrong things to win.
It is interesting, like, especially if it's happening on a small scale. Doping has, I feel like, dominated our consciousness in the last 25 years in Olympic sports, specifically because it's so individual reliant. Like, I think you do run into cases where players have used PEDs in team sports, obviously baseball being an example of that. But baseball is a very individual sport in a way where it incentivizes, performing in a more individual way. I do I don't know. I've never thought about that. Like, I do wonder if it's because the margins of individual sports are often so much finer than the team sport, where things are so much more reliant on you than the average person is maybe more tempted to turn to something that can enhance the performance against other people in a way that, like, taking PEDs, if you're a soccer player, probably won't really give you that much of an advantage compared to the other team. Like, maybe it would if the whole team did, as people allege that Russia did in 2018. But by and large, it's not, the pressure isn't on one individual person in the same way that in a sport like ski jumping, the pressure is all on you, and it's all on your engineering team. Basically, it's like a flying squirrel F1. I don't know. I think that it's an interesting test of, like, how quickly people are able to give up their kind of moral qualms about sporting competition when they have an opportunity to win and not get caught.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely more time than I imagined I'd be talking about this subject on a sports podcast, but it is interesting. And I really I think that this, obviously, I don't think this investigation will be done in the next 2 days or so, but if something does come of this investigation, I think that would be a really, really fascinating outcome.
It would be crazy if someone who won, it turns out that they actually missed it somehow.
Yeah.
Obviously, we have no indication that happened, but
no, we have no idea.
It would be wild. Do you have any other thoughts on this?
No. Yeah. I think we handled that just about as well and as maturely as we could.
I agree. I think it was honestly incredibly mature from us. I do want to talk about, I have a serious story that I want to get to in a little bit. But first, I want to talk about another immature moment involving cheating. But this time in a completely different sphere of life, a different sphere of cheating, if you will. And this is perhaps maybe heartthrob is not the right word, but the soap opera moment of the Olympics so far involves, again, a Norwegian, because the Norwegians are everywhere in the Winter Olympics. Norwegian Sturla Holm Legrid, probably is how you pronounce it in the Norwegian. I gave it my best shot.
We appreciate your efforts.
I really tried. He won the bronze in the 20-kilometer biathlon for Norway. Biathlon is a cross-country skiing and shooting sport.
Just an unbelievable blend of two sports.
I love it. I mean,
whoever came up with biathlon is a genius.
I mean, it's just ski infantry courses.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Norway has ski infantry, and then they just get to send these guys out and be Olympians. I'm like, that's sick. Yeah, I wish I was a biathlete. It's way cooler than the Summer Olympic biathlon. Sorry, guys. So this guy, who was at this point actually won 5 Olympic medals this year, which is pretty remarkable. But all bronzes and silvers. He wins the bronze, and then has a TV interview after winning the bronze. And he begins speaking. We have the translations. He begins speaking in Norwegian to the Norwegian TV, and promptly announces that he is making a desperate gamble in his live TV interview, which is just completely unprecedented. I've never seen anything like this in my entire time as a sports fan. He announces that he cheated on the love of his life, who he met 6 months ago, apparently, on live TV. Apparently he confessed to his girlfriend a week prior that he had been cheating on her. She immediately broke up with him. And then he goes to the Olympics, wins a medal, and on live TV gambles and says, "My girlfriend, you know who you are. This is insane of me, but I'm telling the whole world that I cheated on you in hopes that you see my desperation and take me back," is basically the gist of what he says in Norwegian. He literally breaks down in tears live on TV. Norwegian tabloid VG reached out to said woman off the record, basically said that it'll be hard to forgive him and definitely was not into his apology. But this thing went completely viral. This guy literally took his Olympic limelight and took basically the spotlight away from his teammates who literally won gold in this event, and basically took this moment for himself and just breaks down. He says, "I hope that committing social suicide like this might show her how much I love her maybe I'm dumb as a rock. I've got nothing to lose. And I don't know if you have any reaction to this other than just its incredibleness, but I don't know what he was thinking, and it's just an all-time sports moment.
Yeah, I actually have two reactions. Reaction number one, and John, I'm very thankful that neither you or I can or hopefully ever will be able to put ourselves in the shoes of someone who has cheated or has been cheated on. Which is good. Which is good. And let's keep it that way. But I would just say that, like, I feel like if you were cheated on, I don't think that, like, part of the recovery process that I would need is to see the other person, like, publicly embarrass themselves. Like public embarrassment is not going to build back trust. I don't think. I could be completely wrong, but I can't imagine that this attempt was particularly effective because, yeah, I've never heard of, like, oh, this person cheated on me, but then he publicly embarrassed himself for me, so I'm going to take him back. I don't understand the logic of that. I'm really not sure what he was thinking.
I mean, it's literally, I think he's just trying to create a rom-com moment, genuinely, where, like, he apologizes on live TV and she, like, calls him up while he's doing the live broadcast, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, I want to take you back."
Actually, it is a rom-com. It's like straight up a rom-com script.
I think that's what he was trying to do, and it just calamitously failed, which is the funniest possible outcome. And it just goes to show that sometimes people need to lay off the rom-coms for a little bit and maybe take their life a little bit more seriously.
Yeah, I would just say that, like, on a serious note, not to take a real principle out of this story. You know, we watch athletes and some of them succeed and some of them fail. And when they fail, we kind of think, oh, well, like, we only know about what's happening in the performance.
Right.
But these people are people who are living very complicated lives. Like, I couldn't imagine breaking up with the love of my life and then having to go compete in an Olympic sport 7 days later.
Right.
Like, these athletes are always having things go on in their personal lives at the same time that they're competing. And I think that's just a good perspective for all of us to keep in mind before we, like, go on social media and trash someone for messing up or for not doing things well. We talked about that a lot with, like, Simone Biles or, like, even Naomi Osaka a few years ago. We'll talk about it again with later on in this particular episode with a different athlete. But yeah, these people are having all kinds of personal problems in their own lives while they're also going on international television and competing against the best athletes in the world in their sports. And that should always be in our minds.
And I think something that's cool about the Olympics is these people are at the peak of excellence in what they do in a way that, like, a college basketball athlete is not. But a lot of these athletes are, I would say, and argue, less media trained than a lot of lower tier athletes that are maybe in more visible sports on a regular basis, where, you know, your average Premier League player doesn't give interviews to the media all the time. But when they do, I mean, they have a whole apparatus of media control that's basically telling them what to say and how to say it, where the odds of this happening in a press conference after someone's won man of the match in, like, Wolves versus West Ham is extremely low, right? But in this circumstance, I mean, this guy, I mean, obviously he's won plenty of medals, but, like, I've never heard of him before. Maybe he's particularly famous in Norway, I'm not sure. But this person has never had this kind of global moment on a consistent basis before. And I do think that, like, that kind of can go to your head a little bit, I'm sure, where you don't know how to react and you just kind of are hoping against hope, obviously, as this guy was. But it's cool. I think that's part of what makes the Olympics unique, is you just see so many people from so many different walks of life kind of get that moment to shine. They are so human, both the failures and the successes. And I think that's what makes the Olympics so fun, that it brings in everyone, no matter if you care about sports or not.
Yeah, the majority of them, like, work regular jobs, right? Like,
right.
Unless you're, like, on the unless you're on the men's hockey team, in which case you're probably in the NHL. Like, they work regular jobs, and then every 4 years they get to come and, like, be the absolute best in the world at something. and that's just inherently interesting.
Yeah, it's so cool. And I don't know. Every 4 year, every 2 years, I end up reflecting on the Olympics in a different way. But I think this one in particular has had some really inspirational stories and also some failures that I think have stuck out to me a lot. Do you want to talk about the next one?
Yeah,
the Ukraine
absolutely.
one? Yeah. Okay. So I think the next story that we want to talk about is probably the first like genuinely political story that we have today. There are a few of these, but this is one that it was kind of a small moment early on in this year's Olympics, but I do think it's important to talk about. So Vladislav Hryskevich, a Ukrainian skeleton racer, he basically had planned before the Olympics to wear a helmet that depicted a number of Ukrainians who have been killed in the war against Russia. So like images of different people who had lost their lives. Um, like I said earlier, the war, the Russian invasion of Ukraine started 4 years ago, so right before the last Winter Olympics. And first of all, it's just hard to believe. We don't talk about the Ukraine conflict necessarily very much on this show, other than the fact that Ukrainian athletes get to compete every so often in different events, and obviously Russian athletes are largely banned across most international sporting competition to this day. Be that as it may, Hryskevich, wanted to wear this helmet to basically honor, his fallen compatriots. Many athletes have died in Ukraine who have competed in various capacities and then have died on the front lines or from Russian bombings and things like that. And Hryskevich was told not to wear the helmet by the International Olympic Committee. The president directly told him that, and had dialogues with them back and forth, begged to wear it basically in competition, said that other people, wore other slogans sometimes or things that, were honoring, relatives who had died. And to him, it was the same thing. He said that the deaths of those people was not political. It's just, me honoring where my country is at currently. The IOC did not agree, and ahead of his first potential competition, the president of the IOC came to him personally to basically talk and almost beg him not to wear it. They were just taking the firm stance of like, if he chose to wear it, he was not going to be allowed to compete. So he wore it in training and then came to the race that day and had the helmet on and then was disqualified. He said, quote, "There are things more important than medals. I stood up for what I believe in." And, basically hasn't been allowed to compete in the Olympics since then. He was offered the opportunity to be able to bring the helmet into the media zone after his race or to wear a black armband. And he basically said it's not descriptive enough and not meaningful enough. So Ukraine has, of course, supported him. Elena Smaha, a luge athlete, wore a glove that said remembrance is not a violation during her race. And the Ukrainian athletes who have competed have honored him in different ways. Zelensky has come out to kind of back his decision. The owner of Shakhtar Donetsk has come out to back him. So there's a lot of support in Ukraine for what he's done. I don't know, like, I understand. I don't know where you land on this. Like, I understand obviously I respect his desire to honor those people. I understand where the IOC is coming from. And it's just difficult to know, like, where the line is. I think I always would want consistency here and also a degree of expression, but I do understand that, like, they don't want sports to just become solely a political vehicle. So I don't know. Where do you come down on shows, I guess, of opinion like this?
I think that what is difficult about this is that the IOC is saying that they don't allow political statements, but banning Russia was a political statement.
Right. I mean, that's
it just inherently was. Like, the IOC has taken a side in this war publicly. They have decided that they are allowing Ukraine to compete and they are not allowing Russia to compete in this Olympics because they have invaded Ukraine.
Right.
And so the IOC has publicly taken Ukraine's side in the war, but then are saying that Ukrainians can't make any statements about the war that the IOC agrees is wrong and unjustified. So that inherently feels hypocritical to me. I think in general, like, as a general principle, I do understand the idea of not having political statements at the Olympics. I think that's not really like the Olympics is a very unique, it's a very unifying international kind of event. And, you know, I think that there could be there obviously is politics at every Olympics,
of course,
going back to Munich and the assassination of the Jews, or, the having the Olympics in Korea in 2018 it was a political event. Banning Russia is a political event. Every Olympics is political. But to the extent that the Olympics would like to keep distractions to a minimal and just let the athletes shine, I understand that. But this does feel tricky to me when the IOC banned Russia. Like they made it political. I can't shake that part of it from how I think about this story. Right. I think they should have let him compete. That's what I think.
That is an interesting angle. I think ultimately I agree. I do think that kind of modifying your gear in that way can easily become a slippery slope, which I think they don't want to allow, which is why it seemed like they tried to give him as much of a platform as they could without budging, which I do. I don't think that they massively botched this necessarily.
No, I think if I was him,
it's bad optics though.
Yeah. I mean, if I was the athlete, I think that, winning a medal also honors your country.
Right.
I'm not telling him what to do. He is a Ukrainian. I am not. I'm in no position to speak to him. I would think that taking that custom helmet into the media and then competing for your country, to me, that seems like a pretty fair offer by the IOC. But at the end of the day, I think the IOC could have given this exemption and let him compete, and maybe that would have caused problems in 2028 or in 2030 and you have a whole bunch of athletes trying to do things and pointing to this as an example. But this is a very unique situation. Mm-hmm. The war has been going on for 4 years now. Every international sporting body has taken a side in this war, whether it's FIFA and the IOC, and have banned Russia from all sporting competition. And so I would have liked to have seen this be handled differently.
Yeah, I think with this circumstance in particular, given that I don't think that honoring the dead of your country, if Russia was allowed to compete, I think you would have to be consistent ultimately. I don't think that honoring the dead of your country necessarily needs to be a political statement if everyone is allowed to do it. And that's, I think, the slippery slope question that you have to resolve of what kinds of symbols do you allow, if any? Even if it's not a political slogan per se, how do you define a political slogan? In this circumstance, I think that you're right that it wouldn't have been a problem for this specific show. But I do think that they would have to define very specific rules around what kinds of symbols to not just create exception for this one guy. Like you said, it is interesting just to reflect. I was curious because last Olympics, I remembered a really big Russian presence kind of happening under that non-Russian flag organization that the Olympics basically allowed tons of individual athletes to compete in 2022, even though the war had just started. And I was wondering, well, why is that? And then I remembered that the original Russian ban was actually because of the doping controversy in 2017 after the Sochi Olympics and all the investigations that happened. It basically turned out that Russia had been executing the biggest doping scandal we've basically ever seen in world sports. So they had already been banned competing under the Russian flag. And then there were still 209 athletes who competed in Beijing. But, 4 years later, the war has really stretched on. And basically the Olympic Committee has not given exceptions to the vast majority of Russian athletes who would otherwise compete. So only 13 Russian athletes competed this year, which obviously is a much smaller number. And I don't know, it's just interesting. We have, obviously Russia used to be a huge force in the Winter Olympics. And so it's interesting seeing, obviously Norway has always been really good and is continuing to kind of fill their space. But in the absence of China, the landscape of the Winter Olympics due to Russia's actions are very different. So I think that's just important to note. And I am curious, on the flip side of things, Russia is basically the only country that is banned from world sport in this way right now in a major way. And I think there's still, I'm obviously not going to be like advocating for Russia to be let into the international sporting community, but I think it's interesting. Russia always gets this. Russia's in this position currently. Israel, who was, the Israeli athletes were booed at the opening ceremony by Italian fans. Israel gets flack periodically of people trying to say that they should be banned too. But obviously, I don't agree with that. But I think that there are a huge range of countries around the world that engage in invasions of other countries, that engage in human rights violations, and the Olympic Committee seems completely uninterested in considering banning any of them. And I'm constantly wondering why that is.
Yeah, I think part of it is like there's just a stronger international consensus and spotlight on this war.
Right.
And even a stronger international consensus than like Israel and Gaza or other things like that. And then obviously there are a whole lot of considered like more minor countries where maybe it's just not drawing as much attention. Can I do a really interesting kind of like alternate universe, interesting little thing, which would be that. So the last time that NHL athletes were allowed to compete in the Olympics was 2014 before this in men's hockey. And so it's been 12 years. And so they're obviously here this time, but Russia's not. And
Right.
Alex Ovechkin is still playing. Like he's 40 years old. So like if this war had never happened and Russia had been here, this kind of could have been a very interesting like farewell for one of the greatest Russian hockey player and one of the greatest hockey players of all time. Right. And because of the war that won't happen, I think this would have been that would have been a very interesting storyline had this war not happened and had Russia been allowed to compete, that Ovechkin could have had kind of a big final international event before the end.
That is crazy. I mean, it's just, I do think the Olympics are both the Summer and the Winter Olympics are very different without Russia. And obviously that is the fault of the Russian government. But it is just an interesting reality that often in the past we had three superpowers duking it out kind of by proxy in the Olympics in various forms. And now that's very much a duopoly between the USA and China, at least in the summer.
Oh, I'm doing our next story. I did the prep for this one. Yeah, cool. Okay. This story is just hard to describe. I don't have a lot of good answers for how any of this happened, to be honest with you. Before the Olympics, Lindsey Vonn, a downhill skier, announced her intention to return to the Olympic Games. She had had a long history of injuries and setbacks. She also was one of the most successful American winter sports athletes of all time. And as she was ramping up to compete in this Olympics, she partially tore / ruptured her ACL, which is a key ligament that provides structure in your knee. And in case you didn't know, your knee is an important part of skiing. If anyone has skied, they know this, or has watched skiing, you know this. And this story, so like I hear, okay, Lindsey Vonn has torn her ACL, and I'm like, oh no, that's such a disappointing way for her career to end. She's not going to like do anything for 9 months because that's how it goes normally. And then I saw that she was planning to compete in the Olympics 7 days later. And I was like, that's not possible. That's not like a thing that people do. Because John, I think what my brain knows is that whenever I see torn ACL in the NBA, I know that's a minimum of a 9-month recovery. Like There's no exceptions. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. You tear your ACL, you're out for 9 to 12 months automatically. So I just thought, oh, like that's just how it always is. Apparently not. Apparently you can just do things with no ACL. Like in Lindsey Vonn's case, have 2 successful training runs in downhill slope skiing, which is mind-blowing on its own. But unfortunately, in her first official run, after just like 19 seconds, Lindsey Vonn had a just really, really horrific crash. She broke her leg. She had to be helivaced off of the slopes. in the subsequent like 2 weeks or so, she's had 5 surgeries on her leg.
Yeah.
And it's a really, really sad and disappointing ending to an incredible career. And it leads a lot of questions about like, how was this allowed to happen? I think in this case, it kind of just was her decision. There was no like structure or organization or coach or someone else who was able to stop her. But and I understand all of the impulses that she would have to compete, but I know for me, it was not a fun experience to watch her compete at this Olympics because knowing that every turn of the knee, every jump, every landing, even as a viewer, was just extremely stressful to watch. And that nightmare scenario came true because I mean, you cannot convince me that she would have crashed and broken her leg like that if she had had any sort of structure in her knee. Like that stability is such a crucial part of that sport.
I just don't think like I don't want to come at her too hard because obviously she got in a horrific accident. But that being said, like I don't know what she was thinking. Genuinely, like to me, it was obviously she wanted to have an incredible, moment at the Olympics. She tore her ACL right before, which is just tragic. It does happen. It's an injury, and it's unfortunate. But she's had a great career. Unfortunately, I mean, through that decision, I'm sure like she's never going to ski again competitively. Like, there's no way. If she does, it would be an absolute miracle. And I just think that's tough. Like, you want people in your life who are able to tell you the truth. If you are in that point where you're like, no, I'm fine. It'll be great. There's a reason clearly. I mean, when we heard that she would still be skiing, we were both like, that's physically possible. Like, I honestly didn't even know that you could walk on it, to be honest.
Yeah, I
But
didn't. I honestly, I did not either.
I guess you can. But to me, it's given the seriousness of the injury. I mean, you just have to, both for your own body and if there are people in your life who are taking care of you and speaking into your life, like they need to be the people there who are like, this is a bad idea. Like it is a very high impact, intense sport that's putting so much strain on your knee. Like I didn't understand the decision. Obviously the worst happened and it's really too bad. But again, it brings us back to that kind of that question of the intensity that individual athletes put on themselves. We're like Patrick Mahomes, got an ACL injury, and there's no like question of like, you know what? No, we need him to play in this to finish this game out. Like, nope, your game is done because you're right. There's a structure around him that is like, no, we need you next year. And that's just not the case when you're an individual who all your hopes and dreams are riding on yourself.
Yeah, I mean, to kind of like to give, I think what maybe Lindsey Vonn was thinking was maybe she already knew that this was going to be the end.
It could be
like,
yeah.
Maybe she like was like, I'm going to try to build back for one more run, and then I have this big setup, but I put in all this work to get back into shape. It's already the end, so let's just go try. If it doesn't work out, I'm done anyway. But is that worth like the recovery that she's going to have now? Like for only competing 19 seconds of actual competitive skiing? I don't know. I mean, like, I agree. Like I felt the same way as you, which is like, I did not know that this was something athletes can do because I've never seen someone do it before. Like Patrick Mahomes was not like, hey guys, tore my ACL, see you all out on the field next week. Right. Like last summer, there were multiple prominent NBA players who tore their ACLs, including Jason Tatum and Tyrese Halliburton. They tore their ACLs in May of 2025, and they still have not played a second of NBA basketball. And It's been 9 months. It's been 9 months, and they have not touched an NBA basketball court in actual competition. So, I mean, American team sports take the ACL. It's the most serious injury in Americans, like in American sports. Like the way that it's treated, the amount of recovery time, it is by far the most serious injury with the longest recovery time. And I did not know that it was possible to walk, let alone jump off a ski slope, off a mountain slope, and take impacts on your knee with a ruptured ACL.
It's just unbelievable.
Like the fact that she competed one successful training run, one successful jump is like borderline miraculous to me. I did not know that was physically possible.
Yeah, I remember literally like when I saw the headline that she was like, I'm racing anyway. I was like, it literally didn't compute. I was like, what is going on?
Yeah.
So anyway, I mean, I don't know. Obviously,
I'm really sad for her. It's
yeah,
devastating.
that's the toughest part ultimately. I don't know that this is necessarily a situation where we need to be like, oh, the Olympics need like some kind of review committee for injuries. Like, I don't know if that's the answer necessarily, but I do think that like the American Olympic Committee maybe should have sat down and had a conversation with her. Like, I don't see this as like a sane decision in any way.
I do think, the NFL and Major League Baseball and the NBA, there has become a more standardized player safety program in those kind of sports.
Right.
And that doesn't exist in individual Olympic sports. And I think the idea of exploring some sort of player safety program, I think would be beneficial for the Olympics to do. I have no idea of what that would look like. I have no proposal to make. I don't know. I don't know any of the logistics of that. But it seems like in the current system, there is no structure in place to stop individual athletes from going out in extremely risky scenarios and facing very, very significant injuries. Her injury could have been even worse than it was.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the very least that should be up to the country's Olympic Committee. Who's managing everyone competing to begin with, even if it's not like the IOC. I don't know if this is a widespread enough problem that it's like the IOC needs to like create a program necessarily. Maybe they could, but
like if an athlete was told by their country that they can't compete, couldn't they just go do what the Russian athletes do and compete neutrally? Like,
I guess so.
Like in theory, like they're like the countries don't have any actual power. Like,
right.
Who has power in this situation? I don't even know.
I mean, it probably would be. It would be the IOC or the like the governing body of the individual sport, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Like we saw with the Summer Olympics and that whole boxing controversy and everything. Like everyone kind of works together there. So I mean, maybe there would be a conversation to be had at the kind of the overarching Olympic level on if there is some kind of set of standards that beyond which an athlete shouldn't be allowed to compete. I don't know, like, this seems like a really extreme example where I'm like, I don't know if this is going to ever happen again.
After this, I don't think it will.
But I'm sure that similar things do happen regularly, and ultimately that's, a question that athletes ask themselves all the time, like, can I play through the pain or not? I do want to say it was pretty cool. So another American gold that happened was Mikaela Shiffrin, who won her first Olympic gold in 8 years. She making her the youngest and oldest American woman per CNN to ever win Olympic alpine gold, which is super cool.
Yeah.
And she is the first U.S. skier ever to win 3 Olympic golds, which is a pretty incredible accomplishment. She's reaching the end of her career, but she's, obviously one of the big household names of Olympics on the U.S. side. And that's been awesome. And also important to note that the women's ice hockey team won Olympic gold, and the men, after thrashing Slovakia, will play Canada in the final for men's Olympic gold as well to kind of round out the Olympics.
Yeah, kind of the opposite of the Mikaela Shiffrin. Unfortunately, was that Chloe Kim did not achieve the three-peat in the snowboarding halfpipe. She had won the gold both in 2018 in Korea and then in Tokyo, and she did not compete the three-peat in Milan, unfortunately.
Right, which was tough. She snowboarded well, but wasn't quite there. And I think she fell on her last run, which was tough.
Did, yeah.
Speaking of falls, do you want to talk about, I think, what has been the centerpiece of the Olympics, which is figure skating? Are you ready for this?
I am. Yeah. Every Olympics has this where like there's an athlete that you've never heard of who all of a sudden is the most important person in the world. I'm thinking of Mondo Duplantis in the last Olympics, the pole vaulter, who was just like became just an unbelievable sensation. Of course, like we can go back to Simone Biles. I mean, there's a whole litany of athletes, and it seemed like that person in the 2026 Olympics was going to be Ilya Malinin, who came in with an unbelievable story. His parents were Russian immigrants to America. He probably should have qualified for the Olympics in 2022, but was not given a spot on the men's team. He has achieve things in figure skating that are quite literally physically impossible for any other figure skater to do. And he also does backflips, which
just
I did not
amazing.
know you could do a backflip on ice skates. So that's also very cool. But yeah, I mean, this story was, I think, certainly the most hyped story, and as we're going to talk about, did not live up to it.
Well, are you aware that the backflip was literally banned?
Yes, yeah,
And then basically they, because Ilya is so good at backflips on ice, they basically unbanned it just for him, essentially, except for the fact that you don't get any points. So they're trying to not incentivize people doing it, but obviously he loves to do it, and so he's just been doing it, which is super exciting.
Yeah, and I did find out that like other people before had been banned had done it. One person had even done it while it was banned, but like I didn't know any of that the first time I logged onto TikTok and saw him do it, and I was like, I've never seen anyone do that before. That's pretty awesome.
Which is so cool. So yeah, I mean, I guess Ilya Malinin came into my awareness as the superstar that he is now in America when he sealed gold for the U.S. in team figure skating. He put in a great performance to kind of cap things off, and was just basically flawless and capped the gold. And that was just an unbelievable moment. And it kind of felt like, with the amount of hype and energy surrounding him, like he just feels like a movie star in figure skating form. You know, he's got this like long flowing blonde hair, and he really, which is a funny comparison given that who we'll talk about in a little bit, but he really kind of gives this like Paul Atreides energy almost, of this like heir to the throne kind of situation. Both his parents were Olympic figure skaters, and yeah, so fast forward to the men's individual gold medal, and we're deep in the final rounds. He, you know, some figure skaters have put in some really great performances, others have fallen all over the place, and Ilya Malinin is the last person to skate to determine the gold medal. Everything's on his shoulders. America's like, he is about to be America's biggest superstar. And he basically, his program that was set up was like by far the most difficult of the night. Everyone waited for him to start. It was this like super emo dramatic music, and then he just tanked. He fell twice. He completely messed up 2 other jumps as well. So like literally he failed 4 of his jumps in the short program and free skate. And just like everything that could go wrong went wrong in his performance, after basically everyone hyping him up on TV and being like, this is the heir apparent of all things amazing. And so that was brutal, and we lost out. I do want to give a special shout out to Kazakhstan's male figure skater who won gold. He has
Mikhail Shidorov.
Yeah, he's gained notoriety over the last few months because he really enjoys competing in a Fremen-inspired still shoot from Dune to the Dune soundtrack, which is just incredible work.
My goat.
Do you have any like reflections on his performance? Because I think we should give him his flowers before moving on to
Well, so he does the Dune program in the short form team program. So he did not do his like Dune Part 2 program in the free skate. But I turned on the free skate, and he went I think he went 5th to last, and I turned it on for him. And so I watched the final 5 skates, and in real time, I thought like I've never seen someone skate that well before. Like it really was like the skate of his life, kind of like so like he like tapped something that like he may never tap. Like he went into like just a state of, I couldn't believe it. Like it was, I saw it and I'm like, that might be the best skate I've ever seen in my entire life. Then the very next skater I saw came out in what looked like a Cardinal outfit. And so I texted you immediately and I said, John, get to your television right now, because Italy's Daniel Grassel did his free skate to the score of Conclave in a suit inspired by a Catholic cardinal. And I just thought that I want to give him a special shout out. That was just an inspired choice. I'm very, very thankful to him. But from Grossel, who went fourth, and then third, second, and then the final skater being Malinin, all four of them fell.
Right.
At some point. And which led me and I think other people on the internet to start speculating about like if there was something wrong with the ice or like because it seemed like an unusual amount of falls for that kind of moment, especially for the four presumably the four best skaters to all have one or more falls was weird. And so yeah, I've never seen a resolution about that. I know there've been some complaints about the ice in other sports. Maybe it was that just all four of them, the pressure just got to them and they all just had mess ups. And certainly if Malinin or Grossel or any of the other people had the skate they'd wanted to have, Mikhail Shadorov might not have even made it onto the podium. But as it stands, he medaled, he won gold for Kazakhstan. He is awesome. Like he seemed like he's like a really young kid. He seemed just like the happiest. Like he was in total disbelief. It was an unbelievably cool moment for him. I obviously am very personally tied to his short program with the Dune thing. I want to give a special shout out to Daniel Grossel because I loved his conclave thing. And I do want to say like Ilya Malinin in the short form program and what I've seen of him on TikTok and things like that, like he does things that no one else has ever done. He's an unbelievable athlete. I hope that he competes at the next Olympics. I think that he's only 21 years old. Like there's still a lot of time for him, and I really do think that he can walk away with the men's being the exclamation point on that men's team gold. And he put together an amazing program, and he is still the only person who's ever done the quad axel, and he's an exceptional talent.
Yeah, no, he's unbelievable. And I think to me, Ilya is half of the perfect example we've been talking about for this whole show, which is the amount of pressure that is put on young minds and bodies throughout the Olympics. Like, I remember how mentally, like, all kinds of different things stressed me out when I was 21, like 6 years ago. Like my whole life was just like a bundle of stress and anxiety genuinely all the time. I can't imagine having the weight, not just of the entire world, but the expectation of being perfect on you at all times. And I think it was interesting. Like he didn't talk about the ice at all. It's very possible. It seemed weird, but he talked about the pressure the entire time in the interviews afterward. And he was just tough. I mean, he had just basically like, he finished 8th in the end. Not even a bronze. And, the interviewer was shoving a mic in his face, asking him, how do you feel? Like literally genuinely like a minute after he had just like thrown away the presumptive gold medal. And the interviewer is like shoving a microphone in his face and being like, how do you feel about the most epic failure of your life in the immediate aftermath? And he was super gracious, which was great. Some people wouldn't necessarily be. But, I think he has illustrated just how difficult it is to perform at that level. And I think it's just hard, like the Olympics in particular, again, with the individual talents and the fact that people have to start so young. And with a lot of these sports, I mean, especially figure skating and gymnastics, like you're good when you're really young. And then, by the time you're like in your later 20s, like unlike where other sports where that's your prime, like you're already basically done.
Yeah.
And so that's just, it's tough because the burden is put so strongly on these young folks. They have so much mental fortitude, but it's also just tough to watch sometimes. And so that's why I think the perfect counterpoint to Ilya Malinin is the Olympic skater who yesterday won gold in the women's individuals, which was Alysa Liu, who is 20 years old and put on just like the absolute performance of her life. Did you watch this?
Oh yeah.
Like
yeah.
It is just, to me, this is the moment of the Olympics, easily, like far and away. Like there have been other cool, crazy controversies and soap opera, but like this is the athletic moment of the Olympics. Just someone, she literally is just like the exact opposite of Ilya's like pressure coming on himself. Instead, she just gets out there and then like for 5 minutes just like skates with the most joy and excitement that I've like genuinely ever seen in an athlete ever. Like that's the best of what sports are. And so much of it comes from her personal story, which I didn't know anything about before she skated, but she just has like the coolest story ever.
She's unbelievable. I'll let you go into her story. I think like when you talk about these kind of sporting moments, so much of it comes down to not or how prepared are you for your routine, but how do you handle nerves and how do you handle pressure. And what I think about Malin, and just to go back to him for a second, I really do think that a lot of it's possible that some of the fault for his lack of success falls on like the American media calling him Simone Biles. And you said like you said that he lost his presumptive gold. Like the fact that it was being presumed is a problem, right? Like he's hearing, this generation of athletes, they're on social media, they're making TikToks, they're hearing these things, they're hearing people say he can't lose. He's the Simone Biles of figure skating. Like he's hearing all these things, and that has to get to him. And then you have someone like Alysa Liu. I'm sure she was extremely nervous. Like, how could you not be? But for 4 minutes, she looked like she was absolutely flying. Like she looked like not a single thing in the world could like bother her. And maybe she wasn't feeling pressure. Maybe she was feeling a lot of pressure, but she skated in a way that seemed completely effortless and pressureless, in a way that Malinin just skated tight and self-conscious and defensively. And I think putting these two people together does kind of, it really emphasizes, I think, where that margin between success and failure resides, which is response to pressure.
And I think what's cool about her story is that, in digging into it a little bit, ESPN did a couple great kind of profiles on her backstory, and she really is the perfect counterpoint to this, because she started skating when she was super, super young. It was basically like the best young skater in America. She won the national championships at age 13, the youngest national champion in the U.S. ever. And then she went to the Olympics, and at age 16 in 2022, she quit the sport entirely. She was like, I'm retiring. She could not handle the pressure. It was destroying her. She had a tough Olympics, like, she was able to go, but it wasn't what she wanted. And she felt like she was losing herself as a teenager. And so she just completely retired, stopped skating, went off to college, apparently went to base camp at Mount Everest for a little bit, hung out with friends. And then just one day decided that she was like, I really miss ice skating. And she started doing it again. She found some coaches, and they were basically like, secretly, they were like, we think she's incredibly good and, could challenge anyone in the world, but we're not going to even deal with that. We're just like, we just want you to skate and have fun. And so she's putting performances together and going out and dancing her heart out at national and then international competitions. And then she shows up on the Olympic stage and is just like the loosest person you've ever seen in her life, because it just seems like she just wants to do it for the fun of it. And you can tell that like that made the world of difference to her. And obviously, like, that doesn't mean that every time she's going to do the exact same thing and win gold every time. But I do think like it reminds me of, maybe from a different source, but it reminds me of like our conversation about Scotty Scheffler from last year or the year before, about like that. Obviously for Scotty, like faith is what grounds him, where like winning a sports event isn't the most important thing in the world to him. But I think like even if faith is not your reason for not valuing sports above everything else, there is like a very true and interesting freedom, I think, that comes from knowing that like you are there doing your best and enjoying the moment for what it is. And I think we think so often, like very Whiplash style, that like pushing yourself to the brink is the only way to achieve excellence. But maybe there's something to be said for the fact that like actually taking pressure off yourself can sometimes create excellence in a different way.
Yeah. I'm very, very impressed by her story, and I want you to kind of talk through her upbringing and her biography here in a second. I would just say that, figure skating is always the premier individual event at the Winter Olympics, just like gymnastics is the premier men's individual or premier summer individual event.
Right.
Maybe swimming, but I think it's gymnastics. And I think that those tend to be the places where we're looking for the stars.
Mm-hmm.
That's just natural. That's just where we're looking for the people who are those are the pressure spots. And yeah, I just could not be more impressed with how I fit in. I think Malinin is kind of, we can keep talking about them in pairs, but Malinin, I believe both of his parents were Olympians, and he found figure skating a little bit later in his life, like as a teenager, whereas Alysa Liu had already won a national championship when she became a teenager. So she's like a real like child protege, but she didn't have the same like athletic parent upbringing like Malinin did.
Right. Not at all. So this is interesting. And this is kind of my last big thought from this Olympics is a little bit of a political angle to kind of round us off. So
that's what we do.
Yeah, it's what we do. Alysa Liu, her father is of Chinese, was born in China. And when he was 25, he had to flee China in 1989 because he took part in the Tiananmen Square protests, which, if you're not aware of what that was, it was basically a mass student protest against the Chinese government, in which thousands of people were basically just murdered by the Chinese government. The Chinese government denies this to this day, basically blocks all mentions of it on their internal social media and on the internet in China. But he basically fled, and he found a new life in America, and had kids apparently through a surrogate. This whole odd story that I knew nothing about. But yeah, so he had Alysa, and basically brought her up in ice skating from a very early age. And yeah, I mean, he has just been a huge part of her life and bringing her up in the sport, even though he's taken a little bit of a backseat now. And I think what's crazy is like he has been on China's radar as a result for a long time. I was reading up about some of his story, and 4 years ago, basically the US government said that they had charged multiple people who were basically connected to the Chinese government, who are harassing and stalking US nationals, generally of Chinese ancestry, who the Chinese government didn't like. And among those people was Arthur Liu, Alysa Liu's dad, who basically, because China wanted Alysa Liu to become a athlete representing China, they offered her a ton of money. She said no, obviously because of her, her dad's background. And basically the Chinese government was kind of indirectly threatening him, which is just a remarkable, insane story. So cool that he, was able to find a life here in America. And I think their story provides an enormous contrast with another Chinese American athlete, Eileen Gu, who is a highly decorated freestyle skier, who has just kind of really stolen the limelight in a completely different way, because though she's grown up in America in the Bay Area, and another very successful person who is educated at Stanford and appears in model magazines and all kinds of stuff, she chose to represent China instead. And that is generating a ton of controversy for obvious reasons. I don't know where you want to take the conversation from here, but it's so interesting, again, that we have a pair of athletes that are kind of, we get to compare them against each other and see how different their choices are.
Do I wish that Eileen Gu was skating for America? Yes, I do. Am I suspicious of the amount of money that she's being paid by Chinese-related companies, if not the Chinese government itself, for her participation on Team China?
It is a Chinese government.
I am suspicious of that. But this is, again, I find this a very personal and selectively enforced choice that I can't get too bothered about, I guess. Like, Joel Embiid was born in Cameroon and was a French citizen, and he played for Team USA in 2024. I wasn't mad about that.
Right.
Like, that was great for me. Like, Joel Embiid, I think it's great he played for Team USA, even though he was not born or raised in America. Naomi Osaka has lived in the United States of America since she was 3 years old, but she's chosen to represent Japan. I'm not going to get like worked up over that. And I'm really like, I'm just not going to get worked up over this. I refuse to take the bait.
I mean, I would say, to pose a counterpoint, I would say that I'm really not bothered by her choice. Like, I think she has the right as a potential dual citizen. China does not allow dual citizens, and she has been very like mute on the subject of where she's a citizen of currently. So we have no idea. I am not bothered ultimately about her personal decision, given that she has the right to choose either one to represent. But that being said, you know, the numbers are just kind of crazy, to be honest. So again, her mother came here from China. She grew up here. But basically the Chinese government did offer her a ton of money, and also she gets endorsements from all over the place. She, along with figure skater Zhu Yi, who is also in a similar situation, someone who grew up in America and is competing for China in figure skating, together they've made over the last year 14 million in total from the Chinese government. And Gu, according to Forbes, made $23.1 million in 2025, which is number 4 among female athletes in the world. Which, like, I don't think, like, obviously I'd heard of her, but I don't think I was like aware of the level of fame that she had at this point, where like she has sponsorship deals with huge companies all around the world, especially in China, but also in the US. For comparison, Caitlin Clark made $12.1 million last year. So that's literally almost double what Caitlin Clark made. So just kind of an indicator of the stature that she has. Again, I don't think it's not the end of the world to me, but I do think that like when you are that famous, every single choice you make does matter. And in this circumstance, the life choices that she has made is taking millions of dollars from a country that is persecuting its own people, persecuting minorities throughout the country, that is repressing free speech, that is, you know, arresting anyone who speaks out against the regime, including the government's own leaders are just like all disappearing right now. China is an amazing place full of many amazing people, but China's government is certainly not an institution that I'm going to label as amazing. And I do think that ultimately, when you're offered that much money, you are obviously offered that much money to represent the brand. It is like Eileen Gu is a person sports washing project to me. And, you know, if that's the person that she wants to be, then, you know, she, much like John Rahm or Phil Mickelson or anyone else, has the right to do that. But I don't think it's a particularly honorable decision to make.
I agree with you. Yeah, I think sports washing is a fair word to use, 100%. And I believe that she is making a deliberate choice that is probably primarily selfishly motivated by money. And she is, you know, anyone who's choosing to represent China, we know is, you know, walking the public line in terms of their inability to stray from the Chinese government on anything.
Right.
What I would say, like, when you talk about Phil Mickelson or John Rahm, I would say that, like, yeah, it seems like Eileen Gu has a genuine and sincere relationship to Chinese culture.
For sure.
In a way that John Rahm and Phil Mickelson do not have to Saudi Arabian culture, right? Like, she was raised primarily by a Chinese first generation immigrant mother. You know, to what extent she was raised like in a predominantly Chinese household, I don't know that. I think that there might be family or cultural things that are playing into this as well that simply do not exist for Cristiano Ronaldo or Bryson DeChambeau, who have no relationship to Saudi Arabia whatsoever, other than how much money they're making. But no, I mean, I do fundamentally agree with you, but I would also say, like, I think you can say the same thing in a less, I think that, you know, what's the difference between her and Naomi Osaka. It's just that we don't like China as much as we like Japan, right?
I mean, that's my only point. I have no problem with Naomi Osaka representing Japan, like at all. Like
even though she received all of her blessings and benefits from America too.
Well, to me, that's not the question. Like I grew up in the U.S., but I'm a dual citizen, and if in an alternate universe where I was a really good soccer player, like I would consider representing Israel, if I had that opportunity. So like to me, it's not. I understand the feeling of being split between two identities. I think the difference to me is like it should be obvious to everyone what the Chinese government's play is. And in the case of Alysa Liu, she chose not to represent China, and then literally her family was like hunted down by thugs hired by the Chinese government. Yeah. And so like that to me is like the institution that you're working with here. And so yeah, to me it is specifically an issue I have with the Chinese government, just to be very clear.
Yeah, of course I agree with you, and of course I'm anti-China as well and pro-America, like all of that. I think we've spent plenty of time talking about that. I do think that I guess my point is that for many athletes, this is a very complex and personal decision for people like Joel Embiid, Naomi Osaka, for Alysa Liu as well. And I think I would like to maybe at least be open to the idea that maybe there were some of that involved with Eileen Gu as well. However, when you look at the countries she's representing and the amount of money she's receiving from them, I think we can only we can't extend very much free will, like for goodwill in that regard. Like this does seem like a very direct, like pay for play scheme.
Right. And like, again, like just to emphasize again, like I think it's totally great and awesome for people to like feel tied to their Chinese identity as like a people, and if that's like, it is your primary draw in the end, like I'm not going to like take that away from you or say it's bad. But to me, it's just like, given the situation, given who she is, it feels very plasticky. She feels like someone who is being media trained to represent China on TikTok. And that just, I feel weird.
And it's also just weird to like see her talk in like a very normal American accent. Like, she seems so culturally American, like to an extreme degree.
Yep. It's an interesting situation, but ultimately, I don't think she's won gold at this Olympics, and Alysa Liu has. So
yeah, shout out to her.
Very exciting. Yeah.
Well, John, you said that as of right now, she is like the story of the Olympics, like the moment of the Olympics is her skate, which is true. However, if this podcast comes out on Saturday, there's a really big hockey game on Sunday.
There is.
And I'm really, really like amped up for this Canada USA rematch.
I mean, last year's match in that little mini tournament was like the story of the year.
Yeah, the Four Nations.
It was like one of our favorite things all year. So this is Olympic gold.
I know.
Like if that was a big deal, this is like the lame thing is that fights are banned in Olympic hockey, and the players will be expelled if they start fighting, is my understanding.
So you would like in the international competition of international goodwill, you would like fist fights to be allowed.
Would you not?
In the Olympics?
Are you really taking this stance right now?
I guess they allow boxing.
Boxing is allowed. It should be a combo boxing hockey thing if they have
that's
the moral compunction.
The real biathlon is 20 minutes of hockey and then a 5-minute boxing round.
I feel very strongly that the gold medal match will be more important but less exciting due to its lack of fighting compared to the Four Nations, which is just a shame.
Look, you're not going to hear me say a bad word about hockey fights, but I will say, like, you can have very, very competitive, hard-hitting hockey without gloves off fisticuffs, and I expect these players to be as amped up for this game as humanly possible. Like,
don't get me wrong, it's going to be amazing. However,
yeah,
deep down in my heart, my hope is that there is a game-winning goal in overtime. The game ends, immediately massive brawl happens. That's my hope.
Sure. On the day when the Supreme Court struck down all of the tariffs, I don't.
It just seems like the right time.
Yeah, I mean, might as well. No, I mean, yeah, like this is appointment television. This is huge.
We will be there early on Sunday morning. It's like at 7 a.m. or something Central Time.
That's crazy. I hate that.
I guess I'll be up.
Better be. Anything else on the Olympics, John?
No, it's been amazing. I can't wait for our next show to kind of summarize anything else that happened and maybe talk about the hockey a little bit and if we had any other conclusions. But I think my biggest thoughts are really like it all comes down to the pressure that athletes go under. We get to see people under a microscope in a really unique way.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you want to talk about today? Do you want to talk about the first spring training baseball games today? Do you want to talk about do you want to talk about Arsenal at all? Do you want to talk about the Formula One testing? Anything at all that you want to speak on?
No. Arsenal Football Club does not exist to me right now. So
okay, I just thought I'd ask. You're a man with a microphone, and I want to make sure that you're able to speak on everything that you're interested in. I
appreciate that a lot. I can't help but feel that was snuck in there. I'm excited for the Oscars.
All I want to do is platform my friend and give him.
I appreciate that. When it's time, I will speak, and not a minute before.
That's true. I'm excited for the Oscars as well. This Sunday is the Wylies, which is my younger brother Eric. It's his alternate film award show that I'll be attending and hosting for, which I'll be presenting a couple categories, and I'm very excited for that.
That's incredibly exciting. You'll have to tell us about your experience presenting at an award show, and I'm very excited to be part of the voting body. Which is
you are, yeah. Cool. I'm gonna pick up your membership card, and next year maybe Crunch and Tackles can do the Wileys pre-show next year. We'll do a little.
I would love that. Nothing could be a greater honor.
I think that's it for the pod. I love the Olympics. I just love it. I'm having the best time, and I hope that you all are as well. If you want to continue to hear us or watch us recap the Olympics, and then move right on into the sporting calendar, please make sure to subscribe or follow on whatever podcast platform or video platform you use. Also, John, Apple Podcasts has just announced video integration for their app.
This is so exciting. It's going to be everywhere.
I'll be working on bringing the video side to Apple Podcasts as well. It's not set up yet, but they announced their intention to do that, which is very exciting for me and for us. We obviously just made this conversion, and now Tim Cook has decided to continue to let our faces be in more places, and that's good.
It's great. So go follow us, everyone. Thank you all so much for listening, wherever you're tuning in from, both in the States and around the world. And we really appreciate you guys, and thanks for helping make this show so fun to produce.
Until next time, we hope that you all continue to be well and be safe, and we'll talk to you later.
All right. Cheers, guys.